Badgers. Welcome to another WIP and Chat. There might be a lot more of these, considering that I'm not terribly inspired to do a lot of shopping now with the tariffs going on, all of that right now. So if anything, the whole tariff situation, which I'm sure that's going to affect a lot of the diamond painting community. I think it's going to inspire a whole like shop your closet kind of movement rather than shop the websites, I guess. But you know, it's a little bit of a bummer because that's part of the fun of the hobby, of any hobby, I think, is you get to shop for all the accessories of your selected hobby. I mean, it kind of sucks. But yeah, people got to do what they got to do to hold on to what they have, right? I'm not saying that there won't be any hauls, and the hauls you are going to see coming up, it's all stuff that I bought a while back that I've just compiled into haul themes so that I can still do that kind of video for the people that like to see those. But yeah, there'll probably be a lot more WIP and Chats, and also because for some reason lately I've been in this mindset where before I was kind of like, what would I talk about on a WIP and Chat that would be interesting enough to make a whole video about? And then all of a sudden I started having topic ideas, I guess, because I put the question out into the universe and something out there was like, well, since you asked. So yeah, there's a lot of topical ideas coming to me lately. So you might start seeing these more in rotation than previously. This one happens to be recently I went back to some of the books that were sitting on my to be read, to finish reading stack that's around my bed. And it was a compilation of some of Pope Francis's writings and some excerpts from interviews he's done and speeches he's given and sermons and all that kind of stuff. They're just like little snippets all compiled into a book. And I had started reading it a while back. It was one of those things that I would pick up and read here and there as I was doing the compression sac treatments for my lymphedema. And then I would forget about it for a while, and then I'd pick it up again and forget about it. And now that he's passed away a few days ago, it sort of inspired me to just pick it up and finish it already, because it's not a terribly long book and there's interesting stuff in it. It's just it's one of those things where I have a hard time holding my focus on that kind of stuff more than I used to, but I did finish it. And I pulled some of the ideas that really stood out to me in that book and decided to do a WIP and Chat. Now I will give a little bit of a disclaimer about the book so that nobody's surprised, although you'll see Pope Francis's name on the cover of the book, so it shouldn't be too much of a shock to you, but I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. It is very religious in tone because, you know, it's the Pope and religion was kind of his jam. So yeah, it'll be heavy on the Christianity and Catholicism and all of that kind of stuff in tone. So if that's not your thing, just as a heads up. But don't worry, this is not a video to preach to anybody because that's not really my style. There are other people across YouTube and the internet at large that are comfortable doing that sort of thing and preaching the gospel and all that stuff. I don't feel like that's my place. I've never been comfortable sermonizing at people necessarily. My whole philosophy with life is I just try to live my life, and if there's something useful or helpful or anything good that you pick up from observing me, being around me, anything, if there's anything I'm doing that inspires you, I'm happy for you. I am happy to share it and share my experiences that way. But because I know I don't like to be preached at. I don't like Bible verses shoved down my throat. Even though I grew up around the church, I don't particularly like the approach of having Bible verses shoved at me. Especially when it's done by people whose lives are very clearly messy, but they'll still throw it and, you know, lead with something like, it was heavy on my heart, you know. I was like, yeah, I bet. So yeah, that's not really my style to do that. Anytime I I go into these religious books. I do it more because I am just naturally curious about theology in general, of all religions. I'm just curious of learning different viewpoints. So I read these books sometimes just to, learn how to look at things from different perspectives and pick up ideas and maybe think about things differently that will maybe help me figure out something that I was struggling with in my life. And then if anything, if I make a video about it, it's more just to approach it from a general point of view, not to necessarily bring the religion into it. Even if it comes from a religious background, I tend to like to approach these things just very generally as whatever your situation in life is, how are these ideas applicable to just anybody? So that's kind of my approach, just as a disclaimer. But yes, this all came from the writings and thoughts and speeches and stuff of Pope Francis, who recently passed, as you probably saw in the news. So getting to that, this is all from his book Happiness in Life, which is what he titled the compilation, and it's all translated from the Italian. And there's a little author blurb on the book, as there are on most books. But in the author blurb, I thought it was interesting that it said that he was, did I make a note of it? I think it said something like he was the 266th, 266th, that's hard to say, 266th Pope in history. And it turns out I share a birthday with him, which I didn't know. Obviously not the same year. He was a few decades ahead of me. He was several decades ahead. But yeah, same date though. So I thought that was cool. I didn't know that. But yeah, getting into the topic of happiness, because he goes over a lot of things in this book. And I will say that when I read the book, maybe as the former book reviewer in me, I was just feeling like, wow, this could be laid out a little bit nicer, because it's just the way they laid out the book, it kind of felt a little bit on like a stream of consciousness level, where it just kind of felt like you were reading like his, like, what do you call them, post-it stickies, where sometimes you write down a random thought, but anybody else that would find it wouldn't know like the complete thought, but it'll make sense to you. It kind of like some of the thoughts that were written down, it never never really came into completion. I was like, where were you going with that? Oh no, that's all we're getting of that. But I tried to take all the little snippets that stood out to me and tried to make it like a cohesive topic here. So he starts off talking about how a lot of people in one way or another have these dreams of building a better life, or a better world, a better society in general. We all have those, to some degree, have those idealistic goals of how we're going to make the life better. At least, early on in life, we tend to have those aspirations, where I think it's partly I was going to say at the fault, but that sounds mean. Partly inspired by, when we start off school in the early years, and it's like, you can be anything you want to be. What do you want to be? Do you want to be the president? Do you want to be an astronaut? And we get in that mindset of, wow, what could I do? And so we start out life with these lofty goals, but when we get into life, we get in this place of just getting a little bit overwhelmed. Like we pick career paths, maybe we go into medicine because we want to help people. Maybe we go into entertainment because we want to make people laugh, or we want to give them hope and make them believe in their dreams and all that kind of thing. Or maybe we go into construction because we want to make sure that people have houses they can rely on, or something like that. Whatever your goal is. Like, we all start on these paths with these big inspirations behind us, but then once we get out there, the actual act of living life and trying to go towards that, it's very tiring. You don't anticipate when you're young to get hit so quickly and by so much of the rest of the world being like, yeah, you can't do that. you get this idea of like, oh yeah, this is what I'm gonna do, and it's gonna be super easy, and I can't wait to help all these people. And then you smack into the red tape of the world and all of these people that for one reason or another want to halt your lofty goals. And then somehow we get on this treadmill of just getting by, and we settle into these jobs or these relationships where it's like, yeah, I guess that'll work. Like, maybe I was aiming too high, and maybe I should just be happy here. And people around you will seemingly try to echo that, where they'll start saying the same thing of like, yeah, maybe your standards are too high. Maybe you should just be happy where you're at and stop being so selfish, or something like that. And a lot of times that comes from those people having been in a position where they had to give up on their dreams, and somebody told them they had to settle. And it's just like this unending cycle that generations keep pushing each other into. And Francis, in a lot of his writings, he really pushes for people to try to avoid that trap and genuinely think about where you want to take your life in a way that genuinely makes you happy, and not about what's just going to get you through the day. By all means, we should be driven by the joy and the determination to make our culture and our civilization as humans as nice as possible, and we should encourage support and harmony within our communities. But it's just like the weight of the world, it works on us, and we get into these rat race situations where we feel like it's all we can do to just try to pay the bills and keep our head above water. And somehow we get trapped in this belief of there's no time for anything else. And I've even had people tell me this, where it's like you try to pursue something that genuinely makes you happy, and people almost act like they take it as an affront somehow, that you being happy is a personal attack on them, and like, how dare you how dare you be satisfied in any way with the situation, when don't you see how the world is at large? And if you try to pursue happiness, for some reason there's a lot of culture that, at least here in the States, I mean, I don't want to speak for the whole world, but at least here in the States, that is a predominant feeling, that if you try to pursue happiness, there is a minority that's like, hell yeah, go get it. But a lot of people, they're already in that disgruntled space, and in this attitude of like, what the hell do you think you're doing? You're just supposed to like go to work and be a responsible adult and stop being frivolous with your time. And I think we've all experienced that to some degree or another, where you're just put in this machine mindset of just doing your job and keeping your head down, and somehow that's rewarded. That's, people are told that that's what a good responsible adult does. Francis talks in his writings about how it's okay to admit that that's not enough for you. I mean, some people do that and they are perfectly happy, and if you are happy with that, then by all means stay there, but also don't feel guilty if that is not your ultimate goal and where you find true fulfillment. If there's something else you want, this is your life. You need to go figure out how to get to that, and not feel guilty about wanting what you want. There's there's a lot of people in the spiritual community that will say things like, if it's pressing on your heart and it doesn't go away, that means it's meant for you. I still struggle with that a little bit because yes, in some ways that is true. There's probably a reason something sticks in your head and doesn't go away, but I think there's a risk sometimes where there's like, I don't know, the dark side of me always worries about like the unhinged people of the world hearing that and thinking that that's encouraging like stalker behavior or something. It's like, not everything is meant for you. Come on now. It's it's gonna be mutual. But I don't know. In that case though, I think there are things in life that will be giving you environmental clues that is not actually meant for you, and you're just, ignoring the signs or whatever. But in most cases, I think there's probably some truth in the fact that if something stays on your heart and it's not letting up for like the longest time, and it keeps coming back to you, then there is probably something there that you need to look into and possibly pursue if it makes sense, if it feels good, and you don't see the environmental cues, billboards saying, no, you're just delusional. So yeah, I don't know. But I also think that there's nothing wrong with, having dreams and having goals and ambitions. Like, why not? Like, the world at large is already kind of a dumpster fire. Why not have nice thoughts for yourself and try to pursue them? Like, what harm is it gonna do to maybe do something nice for yourself? So yeah, that's a lot of what he's talking about at the beginning of the book, is this idea of getting trapped in this sense of, we start off in a good place, but then we get disillusioned and we get in that hole of just trying to pursue more and more money or more success, or maybe getting in the rut of trying to force situations with people that are not actually good with us, good for us, but we're still in the habit of trying to make it so. And then we end up wondering why we're not in a better headspace because we're just kind of going with that idea of like, the devil, I guess. So he talks about how, he encourages people to think about how you can get out of that, how you can get around that and live the life you actually do want, regardless of what society says is the better way, or what's more acceptable, all of that good stuff. Because what a lot of us, at least when I've tried to limit my social media more and more, because it's funny, whenever I pull away from it for a while and then I come back, I feel like there's just more and more toxicity from the last time I spent time on. So a lot of times, I spend a good amount of time making content for YouTube, obviously, but I don't do Facebook hardly any at all anymore. I'm not on Twitter at all. I don't do TikTok. I'm on Instagram, but a lot of times I just give myself little pockets of time on Instagram where I'll just post like some funny memes, and I'll check in on my friends and check in on my family that's over there, and because I don't get like a lot of negative stuff on my Instagram algorithm feed. I think I've trained it enough to where I don't get a lot of the heavy stuff over there. Most of what I follow on Instagram is mostly like actors, singers, and comedians I like, and then I've got some of my friends and family over there, and we just throw memes back and forth, and like I give myself a little pocket of time day to day to threw my tools around to do that, and check in on them and joke around on there for a little bit. But I try not to stay on there super long whenever I do that. And then really the only other thing I think I check into every once in a while is I do Threads from time to time, which is really just an extension of Instagram. It's just like Instagram's Twitter, basically. But again, over there, I just post a lot of silly stuff and maybe some like news article I found kind of interesting, that kind of thing. But again, I just use it as a place to joke with my friends and maybe have more of a conversation thread on there than maybe Instagram allows on the way they're set up. But even over there on Threads, it's gotten weird because it's turned into a place of people bitching or people turning it into a dating site, because it used to, like when it first came out, it seemed relatively normal, where it seemed kind of like old school Instagram or old school Twitter, where people were just posting normal stuff about their day, and people were talking about how, oh, it's so refreshing to have a platform that's, you know, untainted and all that. And now when I go on Threads, just like the stuff they recommend for me, I get a lot of stuff on there where there's just like random people trying to make it a dating profile, where they post a picture of themselves and then like actually post things about myself and hit me up if you want to talk, but like in a dating profile kind of way. And it's just like, what is this? What is going on? Or it'll be some person that's like, why don't people want to date me? I don't seem that bad, do I? And then it's like sad dating posts and people trying to console each other. No, you're not that bad. And I'm just over there in the crowd being like, what happened while I was away? So a lot of times I just find social media kind of weird now. So I don't spend a terrible amount of time on a lot of platforms. I'm largely just a YouTube person now that occasionally peeks in on Instagram and Threads, I guess. And that's pretty much it. That is really my social media interaction right there. And I started doing that just because I found it healthier. Like, one of the reasons, like, I don't knock people for using TikTok. I say live your life. I just don't do it because I don't know, it just doesn't seem really healthy in the long run for a lot of people's mental wellness. And you know, I have enough struggles with with mental stability. Well, that sounds extreme. I'm not like unhinged or anything, but just, you know, the general anxiety and depression and all that kind of stuff. I have enough struggle with all of that. I don't really want to unnecessarily add to it. So yeah, I tend to limit my exposure to that kind of stuff where I can. And that's one of the, I mean, obviously Pope Francis isn't really getting into the social media aspect of things, but that's kind of the gist of what he's talking about, is encouraging people to refocus when they get on those hamster wheels of, you know, trying to chase trends and, you know, just the habits we get into, trying to keep our head above water and all that kind of stuff. Just to refocus, take a breath, recall what your original dream was back in the day, and just take a risk and go for it. He says at one point in here that joy is the salt of the earth and the light of the world, and it is the yeast that leavens society as a whole. And at first, of course, my immature brain was just like, carbs. But he goes on to say that, what was it? Never be afraid to attempt the journey, is what he starts with. And then to summarize the rest of it, he kind of goes into just saying, you can't guarantee happiness. You know, you might fall on your face, but it's typically where you're face down in the mud, metaphorically or literally, I don't know your life, that you tend to find evidence of a higher power. You tend to find some reason to have faith, you know? He talks about how we as humans, we tend to have a deep desire to find our people, find our tribe, our person, however you relate to that idea. We tend to want to find our community, I guess, whatever that means to you. Everybody wants some sense of community, some sense of knowing where they belong and what their purpose is and all of that. That's just a basic human instinct to want that. I think that goes back to like caveman days, you know, we're stronger as a family. Didn't they go over that in like what is that movie? The cartoon, The Groods, where the father is talking about that, or like, we're stronger together, something like that. It's been a minute since I've seen that, but yeah, this was one of the first examples or sections of this book that when I was reading all of this, the song Nature Boy instantly popped into my head because of that line, that famous line in that song that says, "The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return." So yeah, once I was reading that section of the book, I had that song stuck in my head forever, which I kindly and conveniently linked onto the community tab, so you can have that stuck in your head as well. It should be stuck in your head. It's an amazing song. But yeah, I will also, if you didn't see the community tab, I will also link it down below in the information box. But he goes on to say that you find life by giving life, you find hope by giving, you love by loving, and living a life of service. And then he expands on this idea and says, encouraging people to go into living a life of faith and finding ways that transcend our own egos and what he calls the comforts and inflexibilities of our egos. Going forward through life with faith and trust, the path we're truly meant for will be illuminated if we just quiet our minds and get out of our own way and take a deep breath, and once in a while just pause and say something simple like, okay, show me. Just show me. And just see what the world does. Just in that quiet moment after you say, show me. I mean, don't wait for it to like instantly come down like a thunderbolt or anything like that. So that's probably not going to happen. It might take the universe a minute, They got a lot of people to answer for. Maybe give them a little window of turnaround time. But don't. Usually how those things tend to work, as far as like, some people get a little bit weird about the term manifestation, so you can call it whatever you want, but just like putting a prayer out there, prayer and manifestation is essentially the same thing. It's just a different title. But basically you put the thought out there, you put what you want, whether you're saying it as a manifestation into the universe or asking God or however you do it, you just put it out there into the consciousness ether, whatever. And then the trick is you're supposed to forget about it for a little bit. You don't forget about it in the sense that like you don't want it anymore. You just don't let it control your life. You go on with your day-to-day, and you don't let it stress you out. You just accept that you put it out there that like, hey, this is something I would like. Because usually it's the stressing out that tends to delay anything happening, because you get hung up on the energy of like, it's not here, it's not happening. And everybody is guilty of doing that. Everybody goes through that process of learning how to spiritually and emotionally and consciously and all that just calm your tits. You got to tell your inner self to calm your tits. It's happening, it's gonna happen, calm your tits. Which I'm telling you because I have to tell myself a lot of times. Angie, calm your tits. And if you get into that mindset, and it's like a muscle, like anything else. It's like a spiritual muscle. If you ever see those videos, I think I've mentioned this in videos before. If you ever see those videos online that are just like, bring anything into your life in like 10 minutes or a day or something, like that's all bullshit. Like sometimes it will take a minute, because things have to line up in a way that universally makes sense, as far as if there are certain people or opportunities or things like that you want in your life, they're not going to just suddenly teleport onto your front door within like 2 seconds of you putting it out in the atmosphere. Like, the world has to realign so that it energetically makes sense that these opportunities or these experiences would cross paths with you. So the world has to align in a way that if you think of it as like a big universal chess piece, this piece has to be moved here and this piece has to be moved here, and eventually you get your pieces closer together, and then it gets to a point where, yeah, it makes sense where these two pieces would cross paths and make sense to commingle. But sometimes that process takes a minute. So I kind of laugh when I see these videos come up online of like, oh, you want that job? Oh, you want him to call you or whatever? And it's like, watch this video and it'll happen in 10 minutes. I'm like, not. Everybody just, it's not going to happen in 10 minutes. If he's texting you 10 minutes after watching this video, it's probably a booty call. That's all I'm saying. It's probably not your person. But who knows? I don't know. Like I like to say, I don't know your life. I'm just saying. Being a naggy Nelly, maybe. But yeah, it's just what was I saying? Oh yeah, the calm your tits thing. Yeah, just learning to be at peace, but also be optimistic and, have that belief that magic can happen in your life. Just like, and don't let people make you feel shitty about believing in these things. Why? Like, you believing that there's magic in the world is not hurting anybody. Unless, I don't know, maybe you take it too far and you're actually going about the world like you're a legit wizard and you're like, I don't know, jumping off buildings because you think you can fly, or I don't know. Like the extreme cases, maybe you would be hurting somebody and making more work for EMTs somewhere. I know that stuff can happen from time to time. I blame the drugs. But in general, most of us have enough of a grasp on reality that it's okay for us to have a little sense of magic too, because we understand the idea of balance. And knowing that you have to have your feet rooted in the actual world, but it makes it more fun to, whoops, hold on, one of my drills got a little stuck and irked everybody else. Okay, there we go. It just makes it more fun to have a sense of magic mixed in there. And it's like, if you think about it, like, all the people that are obsessed with Disney now, everything Disneyland, Disney World, all of that, Walt Disney still had to pay his taxes and pay his insurance and pay the power and electric bill and all that stuff. Like, guy was broke a lot before he became filthy rich. So he still had that reality of like, yeah, I'm kind of a broke ass. If you read up or watch the stories about the early days of the creation of Mickey Mouse and like, I think, was it Snow White? I think that was the first big cartoon they came out with. Yeah, if you watch like a documentary or read up on how that all came together, yeah, there were a lot of years in there where Walt Disney was broke as hell, like pretty much homeless and trying to be a squatter in places because he couldn't afford rent and all. Like, he had a very firm grasp in reality for a long time. But he always had that magical little mouse in his brain keeping him going and saying, no, I have this idea of this world I want to create. And now look at how much him believing in that created a world of escapism for so many other people that they rely on to get away, even though it's harder now because it's it's harder to get into that escapism because reality slipped in and now nobody can afford to get to the escapism. But back in the day, when it was a little bit more family friendly on the pocketbook, I guess, the intent was there. But I still see plenty of people going to Disneyland, so I'm sure there's still plenty a market for it. But yeah, that kind of idea of like, yeah, you have plenty of basis in reality, but there's nothing wrong with also having your little corner of magic in your life, So that's a lot of what he's saying is like, absolutely let yourself have that. And if anybody wants to give you crap about it, just don't worry about it. Just, give the attitude of like, well, I'll just let you be wrong over there. That's what I tend to think of when I see people acting like that. Like, well, you're entitled to your wrong opinion. That's fine. And I just make peace with it that way. Okay, hold on a second. Did I do? No, still some more over there. Some more green ones. And I'm sure you've probably heard plenty of people say it, or you've seen the internet posts of people saying stuff like, happiness is a choice, and it is. Like, you do have to actively choose not to get sucked into the life bullshit constantly. And you have to actively pursue the goal of seeing the good and seeing the magic and believing that it's still there no matter what the reality looks like. Still actively making yourself believe in hope and good things and bright futures and all of that. You do have to actually make an effort to choose to live that way. And again, that's like one of those spiritual muscles you have to get used to your body and your brain doing. But there are going to be plenty of people, if you choose that path, that are going to shit all over that. Because I think if you go through your life trying to be happy and trying to be content with where you are, because I think that's one of the big goals or one of the big things that I figured out once I decided that I was not going to be all pissy about life as like a standard anymore. Once I decided that I was going to look at things more optimistically and let myself have big dreams again and have goals and things that I wanted to work for, and not let people beat me down and try to tell me that was silly or unattainable or any of that. Once I started like letting myself believe in myself again, there absolutely were people that, they still come out every once in a while. I give them less attention. But in the early days of me practicing this, there were plenty of people that were just like, what are you even talking about? And it seemed like, I don't know, after a while I started to feel like, I think it's something like me being happy makes them feel bad about them not being in that place. And I just want to tell people that, like, me trying to keep my life in a good place, I'm not stopping you from doing the same thing with your life. So I don't know why you'd be mad about it. As always, I'm just living my own life in this little corner over here. I'm not trying to disrupt anybody. I want everybody to have good things in their life. I want to promote everybody finding whatever brings them joy and makes them say, hell yeah, this planet. Because I think we all need that. If it's going to turn around for all of us, we all need to be putting that energy into encouraging everybody to have their hell yeah moments. And create that like big old energy bubble of everybody just in a good place. I think that's really beneficial, to genuinely be rooting for people and rooting for yourself, And when you first start doing it, it's gonna feel awkward a little bit when you first get into it because it's easy to be in a pattern of negativity in this life, because you're constantly exposed to people telling you, either in person or online, that you're being silly, you're being stupid, that you just need to go out and get a real job, or whatever people tell you, and stop dicking around with your life, however people perceive it. Like, there's always people around that will, in one way or another, try to tell you that you're wasting your time. So if you try to block all that out, and for some reason, just the way people are wired, it's just easier for some reason to believe in the bad side of yourself rather than the good side. It actually takes training to tell your brain, hey, let me have good thoughts about myself, please. That'd be cool. At least that's what I've noticed in myself. And I think there's probably a lot of people that go through that experience of, for some reason, if people tell you negative things, your brain instantly is like, yeah, that makes sense. But if people try to give you a compliment, for some reason, you feel like, yeah, they're probably just being nice, or they want something out of me, or I don't know. I still do that to this day. If somebody tries to compliment me, outwardly, I'm like, oh, thanks so much. But inwardly, there is still a corner of my brain that tries to argue that there's an ulterior motive for somebody saying something nice to me. because it's so ingrained in there that I constantly have to retrain my brain. Hey, sometimes people are just being nice, you know? But yeah, you got to work at getting comfortable with just not giving a damn and just living a good life for you. And it's hard because that also means that sometimes you have to go against even your family or closest friends, because sometimes people super close to you will also be the ones that are like, what the hell are you doing? Because it won't fit into what they're used to seeing as far as the version of you. And sometimes it takes time to get comfortable with being like, this is how I want to live now. This is who I am now. And that's the thing, is like, you have to get to a point where you're living genuinely for you, and you got to be strong enough to go up against even your friends and your family if they're going to go against you. And you got to be confident enough in what you want and the dreams you want to pursue to be like, you know, I would love to have you along, but I got to do this though. And that's hard for a lot of people. So I think that's probably why a lot of people are just like, I'm just going to stick with what's comfortable, because it's scary to go up against people you genuinely love and respect. The strangers on the internet, that's easier to dismiss. But when it's people in your inner circle that are also being like, I don't know, man, that's harder to fight against. But you have to be so secure in yourself that even if it calls for standing up to them, you have to learn how to be okay with it. And that's really hard. I think it's a decision you do have to make, though, if you want that very best life. And the longer you do it, the longer you practice, it does get easier. It gets easier to say no to people, and it gets easier just to say, this is how I am now. And eventually, life does smooth out. The road smooths out. People get on board in time. And the people that don't get on board, it's likely a sign you didn't need them anyway. You know, that's one of the hard truths of adulthood. Sometimes the friends you start out with aren't going to be there on once you get to the path you're truly meant to be on. Sometimes friends transition out, in and out of your life. And there are different friends. I mean, some friends will stay with you the whole time, but one of the hard truths of adulthood is that sometimes friends will transition out of your life when you get to a different stage in your life. But it sucks, but you have to make peace sometimes with just understanding that you're not on each other's paths anymore. And I am a believer in the idea that certain people are brought into your life to help you learn things, that sometimes those people aren't meant to stay there, because they were only meant to come into your life for a period of time to teach you a lesson, a soul lesson that you needed to learn. And for whatever reason, the way they presented it was the way you needed to learn that. And then once you learn the lesson and you kind of grow out of that phase in your life, sometimes that means you outgrow that friend too, because they won't always grow with you. And it's just, I've been there. It sucks. It hurts so bad going through the early stages of that. But again, like, the road does smooth out in time, just so you know. If you're going through that situation currently, I'm just here to encourage you to just give it time. The road does smooth out, but I hear you, because I've been there. The first part of the road sucks like a mofo. It hurts so bad to have that realization that sometimes people you thought were like ride or die friends and they were going to be with you to the end, sometimes those people will bail on you unexpectedly. But you know what? I've also discovered that sometimes when that happens, that means that the space is opening for an even better friend that will stick there the whole time. So keep that in mind too, that if somebody is transitioning out of your life, it means that the world is trying to make space for someone who is even better for you. Whether that's friendship, romantic, whatever. Whatever the situation is, you know, life, if that sort of thing happens, life is trying to bring something super awesome into your life usually, but super awesome can't come in if just okay is in its seat, so sometimes things have to transition out. But that's why I try to work in my videos quite a lot. I try to work in the idea of being brave and finding your courage, because I had to learn that myself, and I still have to remind myself of that sometimes. When I start to get distracted or losing hope and whatnot, it's important to find your courage and hold on to it, because you need that courage, and you need to learn how to work it like a muscle and get it stronger, and find a way to be more secure in it, to the point where virtually anybody can come up to you and you're just like, yeah, okay. And it takes time and practice to get there, but you need that to get to like the really good stuff in life. You need courage when you are in that space where you need something to steady your steps when they're wavering, and you need something to reignite your enthusiasm, and refuel when you need to strengthen that walk of faith or whatever you're doing. You need that re-encouragement, I guess, to keep going. You need that for yourself, because sometimes there will be times in your life where you will have to be your own cheerleader. There won't be a crowd of people around you to be like, hell yeah, keep going. Like, sometimes there will be, but you got to be ready for times when it might just be you, and you got to learn how to stand on your own and be like, you know what, I believe in you. But one of the things that Pope Francis says in this book is, he says, you need courage to fight, not necessarily to win. Courage to proclaim, but not necessarily convert. You need courage to find alternatives without necessarily becoming aggressive. Courage to be open to the world, and courage to resist skepticism without becoming arrogant. So he goes on to talk about how you need to have courage to be able to go against the grain, and have courage to allow yourself to be truly happy in a world where there's going to be a lot of people that weirdly take offense to that. But I think especially in today's environment, where a lot of people on social media get caught up in trying to one-up each other, or stay with the trends, or stay locked in consumerism and all of that, rather than getting caught up in that sort of whirlpool of instant gratification and keeping up with the in crowd and all of that, just pause and breathe and listen to yourself, and genuinely ask yourself what it is that you want, regardless of what anybody else in the world would think. What is it that would make you excited to keep going and be inspired and genuinely like the life that you're living in your body? What is the thing that makes your heart soft and makes you giggly and all excited like a kid on Christmas? And what gives you that glowy sense of soft peace when you're sitting around a fire with friends, or you're watching a sunset at the beach, or that feeling back when you were a kid during summer vacation, and you'd have those days where you'd be in your room and you'd have the windows open and you'd have the sun stream in, and the sun is warming up your room, and then you have that awesome, like, super soft breeze just go over you, and you would get in these moments as a kid where like everything felt perfect right there. What is it in your life that makes you feel like that? What takes you back to that place? And whatever that is, just unapologetically pursue that. And like Francis says in his book, joy feels risky. He acknowledges that. But the thing I was thinking of when I was reading this is I've been there, and yes, joy is scary, but like, what's the alternative? That's one of the things that helps me push me along, is I ask myself, what's the alternative to pursuing joy? to going down the path of not pursuing it and just going with what you think everybody else wants you to do. And then you get into this sort of soul crushing stance in your life where you just feel numb and you feel dead inside, and you're just supposed to pre-game feeling dead inside your whole life until the real thing happens. That sounds so incredibly depressing to me that I would just rather risk it and pursue joy, and maybe make people uncomfortable. So in his book, Francis is encouraging people to just go for it, just risk it. And he goes on to say that the secret to a good life is to love and surrender to joy and sacrifice yourself to joy. And for me, that was, again, going back to that Nature Boy song. But he explains that he doesn't mean just romantic love. He's also talking about general love based in charity and selflessness and doing things to bring others up who are struggling and helping others rediscover their strength and dignity. And this empowers you and gives you a sense of purpose and helps dispel feelings of sadness and regret, and loneliness and anger and emptiness and all that stuff. So back in 2014, there was a speech that's referenced in this book where Francis said that the church does not grow from proselytizing or, being heavy on preachiness, but instead by attraction, being a testimony to joy of faith, joy that radiates out and expands out and makes people curious. That's what it would grow the church more. And he said, genuine joy tends to be contagious and infectious. And the thing that cracks me up is he says in this speech or in this sermon, please, no pickled pepper faces, never. Because you have to remember that all of these words, they've been translated from Italian. So I guess that was the translated equivalent, is he said no pickled pepper faces, which basically he's just saying there are people that take religion way too painfully seriously and they don't let themselves have some fun with it, because it's supposed to be a fun relationship, you and your faith and your higher power and all that. There should be some fun in it. And some people are just so serious about everything that he's just saying, don't do that. Just be happy about your joy and your journey and all of that. Have some fun with it. And then he goes on to explain that having faith does not mean that you never have difficult moments. It just means that you have the strength to face them because you know you're not alone. And that's one of the things that I try to convey with my channel here, is that sense of you're not alone. Because that's one thing that I've struggled with in my journey, I guess we'll call it, is that sense of, and realistically, I know it's not true, but I think everybody is just prone to getting into these states of mind where they feel like they're alone and that nobody's hearing them and nobody would understand, and they just got left by the world. I know what that feels like, because especially if you're somebody who's experienced chronic illness and autoimmune disease and things like that, there's things that come along with that there's no way to prepare you for, because you don't expect the way other people are going to take it. You get kind of caught up in just handling it yourself, and then you're sort of sidelined with the fact that it makes a lot of other people uncomfortable, and you have to get to a place where you just sort of have to live with that. And it's one of those things that sidelined me when I first started having a dive in my health, and wasn't quite at the point where now I'm doing a lot better. I still have off days, but I've got it more balanced out now, where I know how to prepare and recover and all of that. But it still makes a lot of people uncomfortable if they see me walking weird, or they witness me lose my words from time to time, or lose my hand strength or something like that, and I start dropping things. Like, there's just awkwardness that comes along with being sick that makes other people uncomfortable. And there have been a lot of people in my life who were really cool with me when I looked a lot healthier, acted a lot healthier, and then when my symptoms became more obvious, there's a lot of people that backed out of my life because they're just like, this is a lot. You know, I've mentioned on videos before that that was one of the big things that ended up making my marriage falter, is that my ex got to a point where he wasn't saying the words out loud, but his behaviors were basically saying, this is a lot. This is, yeah, I'm not into this anymore. When my symptoms started getting more and more obvious, and, you know, he had to be more of a guy that could be relied on. You know, that was a lot for somebody that, you know, he didn't like seeing all the sickness in his own house. When I was healthier, he used to joke he doesn't like bringing work home because he's a firefighter. But yeah, that was one of the most painful experiences, to go through that, and realize that you hitched your wagon to somebody that said words that they didn't put actions behind. And he wasn't the only one. Like, there were a bunch of people in my life that had that same sort of sentiment, where they would see things that were going wrong in my body and they'd have that same reaction of like, this is a lot. It's one of the reasons why I don't do a lot of dating now, because when I go out in public, I still see it in people. If I'm having an off day and my legs are wobbly or my words start to go, I start seeing it in people's faces, where it's that face of, this is a lot. And, you know, when you try to go out into the dating world with that, there's a lot of guys out there who are like, this is a lot. And it, you know, dating just for anybody is awkward and tricky enough. And then you throw in, you know, disabilities and stuff, and then it just gets really weird. So yeah, I'm not as active out there as maybe I was back in the day. But I know what it feels like to feel like everybody has backed out of your life or said that you're too much or whatever. And so at least with this channel, I try to make a space where just, yeah, come on over, come on in. I don't have any rules or things about people having to be a certain way or a certain type or a certain faith. Like, I don't care. I welcome everybody. The only people I really like block out of my life are like the obvious ones, like you know, the people that put hands on other people, you know, put people or animals in dangerous situations. If you're an animal abuser, the wife abuser, child abuser, if you're one of those freaks that say that children are a sexual preference, all of y'all in that category, fuck all the way off my channel and out of my life. I will not be entertaining any of those folks. You know, the obvious people that just need to be boxed up and put away. I don't have space for those kind of people in my life. But outside of the obvious gross people of the world, I welcome everybody else. And I like to make a space where you don't have to worry about what you look like, what's in your bank account, what's in your garage, what's in your closet. Don't care. Your illnesses, your faith, whatever. Bring whatever to the table. I don't have any rules or hang-ups or expectations about that. I just want everybody to be chill and happy and fun. Wherever people are feeling like a misfit elsewhere in the world, at least they can feel like they got a place here. That's all I'm saying. So one last topic to close out this video. There's one more thing that I wanted to go over that Pope Francis talks about in his book. A lot of other stuff in the book, but just of the things that sort of stood out to me. And since we just had Earth Day, I thought it was a good thing to close this on. Is he talks about this idea he calls human ecology, where we need to have a genuine care for all creation, feeling a sense of appreciation and protection for all natural resources, working towards promoting clean air and water, and doing things that heal the lands but also ourselves. And in this sense of ecology, he talks about we need to identify what pollutes our heart and minimize contact with that. And peace should not merely be an absence of war. either within ourselves or with other people, but it should also be this sense of soul harmony, genuine soul harmony with yourself, with others, your immediate environment, nature as a whole, everything. You just need to remain steadfast in the belief that harmony is always possible no matter where you are. And no matter the circumstance, that you need to have faith that you can get out of that circumstance one way or another, and that you can achieve harmony at some point in your life. So, to close all that, there is one little tidbit at the very end of this book I thought I would share that I thought was really cute. If I can find the page really quick. It has to do with this interview he did with a kid. And the little boy that was interviewing him says, "Everyone tries to be happy, but we are wondering, are you happy and why?" And I just thought it was cute that he directly asks the Pope, "Are you happy?" And Pope Francis answered, "Absolutely, absolutely, I am happy. I am happy because, well, I don't know why. Maybe because I have a job and I'm not unemployed. I have a job as a shepherd. I am happy because I have found my path in life, and traveling down this path makes me happy. And it's peaceful happiness, because the happiness of my age is not the same as the happiness of my youth. There's a certain inner peace, a vast peace, happiness that comes with age. And although there are always problems along the path, even now there are problems, this happiness doesn't go away. No, this happiness sees the problems, it endures them, and then it moves on. It tries to resolve them, and then it moves on. But in the depths of my heart, there is peace and happiness because of God's grace, really. It's His grace, not my merit." And this was from an interview he did with children back in March 2014. So I thought that was cute to close this out on. That's all I have for this one. I gotta be quick with this because my phone has been acting up, and for some reason it's only letting me do like 10-minute segments right now, which is not something it's ever done before. So hopefully I can do this and string it all together and make something cohesive and interesting for you to watch. But if you made it this far, thanks for stopping by, and we will talk soon. Bye, guys.